I paid for every bite they ate, every flower they smiled under, every toast they raised. Not for me, but for the sister who had always known how to turn my moments into hers. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw my glass or demand the mic back. I just stood there, champagne still trembling in my hand, watching the celebration unfold around someone else. The banner above the stage read "Celebrating Strength," and in the crowd's laughter and applause, I became a ghost in my own story. This wasn't just a stolen party. It was the final lesson life had been trying to teach me all along. Some battles are won not by speaking louder, but by walking away clearer. I don't know why I said yes. When my manager at Bradley and Lane shook my hand and said, "You're ready for the next level," something inside me cracked open. After years of working late, folding my ambition into polite corners and smiling through overlooked promotions, I was finally seen. Not as Claire's older sister, not as the girl who always handled things, but as Stephanie Allen's strategist, leader, someone who had built herself piece by piece when no one else thought to ask if I needed help. That night, walking home through the soft Seattle rain, I decided, this time, I would celebrate. Not quietly, not alone, not like the other milestones I had tucked away where no one could find them. I called my mother the next day, voice shaking a little with something that tasted dangerously like hope. She sounded thrilled, eager. "You should let us host it," she said, her voice sweet and familiar, the way it had been when I was small enough to believe promises were unbreakable. "Do it at home. It'll feel more intimate. Easier for your grandparents." I hesitated. Part of me knew better. Part of me still wanted to believe this time would be different. "I'll handle everything," she said. "Just send the budget. We'll make it special." So I did. I wired $4,000, 0 cents, the next morning. Catering, decorations, music. I even chose a color scheme. Navy and ivory. Clean, powerful, mine. The first red flag arrived a week before the party, tucked between casual texts about menu options. "Oh, and a few of Claire's friends are coming too," Mom said breezily. "She's been feeling isolated. It'll be good for her." I pressed my phone against my forehead and breathed through the familiar ache. Claire's friends. Always Claire's friends. Always an afterthought wrapped in obligation. But still, I stayed silent, like I always had, telling myself it wasn't worth the fight, that surely, it would still be my night. The afternoon of the party, I arrived early, stepping into the backyard with my navy jumpsuit clinging sleek against my skin, hair styled soft, makeup precise. I had envisioned myself walking into a space that whispered my name in every detail. Instead, the ribbons were lavender, the candles were pastel pink, light jazz floated through the air, the kind Claire liked, and over the pergola, a banner in sweeping script read, "To new beginnings, celebrating strength." Not "Congratulations, Stephanie." Not "Farewell and good luck." Just vague sentimentality that could belong to anyone, and somehow belong to everyone but me. I found Mom by the catering table, laughing with a stranger. When she saw me, her smile didn't falter. "It's perfect, isn't it, sweetheart?" I opened my mouth, closed it, nodded. I moved through the crowd like a polite ghost, smiling, sipping champagne I couldn't taste, laughing at jokes I didn't hear. My grandparents sat by the garden, chatting with Dr. Han from the university. Claire's friends, new faces I barely recognized, clustered near the gift table. The world spun on, without noticing that I had stopped moving. 15 minutes in, Mom clinked her spoon against a glass, and the hush that followed was heavier than the gray clouds pressing down on the city. "Everyone," she said brightly, "today isn't just about career moves. It's about resilience, about rising above." She turned, her gaze glowing not toward me, but toward the house. "Today we celebrate Claire." Claire stepped onto the patio in a soft lilac dress, radiant under the twinkle lights. The applause was immediate, thunderous. Someone handed her a bouquet. I looked down at my empty hand, my empty glass, my empty plans. This wasn't just the theft of a moment. It was the confirmation of a lifetime of erasure. I didn't move. Couldn't move. Until I heard a woman whisper behind me, sharp and curious. "Who's the girl in navy again?" I turned away then. Not far, just enough. I walked back inside my childhood home, down the hall where my drawings had been taken down to make room for Claire's trophies, where my room had been reassigned without asking, where silence had always been the safest answer. I stopped in front of the hallway mirror. The girl in navy looked back at me, steady, tired, still standing. Not Claire. Not the good daughter. Me. Stephanie Allen. And for the first time, I understood. They could erase the banners, the toasts, even the cake. But they would not erase me. Not this time. I didn't plan to speak. I hadn't written anything. I hadn't rehearsed. When I stepped out of the hallway and back into the backyard, the applause for Claire was just dying down. She stood by the stage, basking in the attention, her arms full of roses, her smile wide and steady. Mom hovered nearby, pride radiating from her like a beacon. I stood at the edge of the crowd, feeling like a guest at a party I had paid for, champagne still warm in my hand, heart still cold in my chest. The world spun without me again. I caught Dad's eye across the patio. He adjusted his cufflinks, the way he always did when uncomfortable, then strode toward me. "Don't make a scene," he muttered under his breath. I stared at him, steady. "Why would I?" I said. "This clearly isn't my party." He stiffened but said nothing. Family. That word again. It had been wielded like a blade my whole life, sharp enough to cut but dull enough to deny the damage. I looked past him at the people still clapping, still laughing, still blind. I stepped forward. No one stopped me, not Mom, not Dad, not even Claire. I moved through the gathering like a ghost, finally ready to haunt her own house. I reached the stage, gently touching the microphone. A soft squeal of feedback cut through the conversations. Heads turned, conversation stilled. I cleared my throat, feeling my heart pound once, hard, against my ribs. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm, even, "just for a moment." Claire turned toward me, blinking. Mom froze mid-sip, the champagne glass trembling slightly in her hand. "This evening," I began, "was originally planned to mark the beginning of something new for me." I paused, letting the silence stretch. "I was recently offered the position of Vice President of Strategic Growth at Holloway Partners. It's been a journey. Years of late nights, lost weekends, and quiet sacrifices, and I wanted to celebrate this chapter with the people I thought mattered most." I looked across the faces staring at me, some curious, some uncomfortable, some simply confused. It didn't matter. I was no longer speaking for them. I trusted my family to help me mark this moment, I continued. I trusted them with the details, the planning, the spirit of what it meant. My gaze settled on Mom, then on Claire. What I didn't expect was to fund a celebration where my name would be the only thing missing. A ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd. Claire stepped forward, her voice tight. "Stephanie, this wasn't supposed to—" I raised my hand, silencing her. "Let me finish." "You raised 2 daughters," I said, turning toward my parents. "But only one has ever been allowed to shine. I swallowed it when you gave Claire my bedroom. I swallowed it when you used my college fund for her rehab. I swallowed it when you praised her for survival, while expecting me to succeed without mention." My voice didn't waver. It didn't need to. The truth carried its own weight. I thought maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Behind me, Andrew, the boyfriend Claire paraded like a badge of stability, stood awkwardly near the gift table. I caught his gaze. He leaned toward Claire, whispering. She shook her head, frantic. He looked at me again, confusion bleeding into anger. "You paid for this?" he asked, voice cutting through the night. I nodded. Every flower, every fork, every glass of champagne. His face darkened. He stepped back from Claire, shaking his head. "You don't get to steal someone else's light and call it healing," he said quietly, before walking away. The silence that followed felt different now, heavier, honest. I looked toward my grandparents. Grandpa Arthur stood slowly, grasping Grandma Helen's hand. They didn't need to say anything. Their quiet nod was enough. It always had been. I set the mic down gently, the sound of it settling into the cradle loud in the stunned hush. And then I walked, past my parents, past Claire, past the table of guests who didn't know what to say. I didn't rush. I didn't stumble. I didn't apologize. I didn't belong to their narrative anymore. I didn't need to prove my hurt. I didn't need to audition for a role in their carefully curated idea of family. I simply stepped off the stage they had built without me and walked into the life I had been crafting alone all along. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just walked. One step after another down the stone path, my heels tapping quietly against the ground, each step lighter than the last. No one stopped me. Not until I reached the gate. "Stephanie!" Claire's voice rang out sharp and panicked. I turned. She stood clutching the bouquet, trembling slightly, mascara streaked from whatever tears she thought would redeem her. "You've always hated me, haven't you?" she accused. The words hung between us, brittle and wrong. I blinked once. "What?" My voice was calm, too calm. "You couldn't let me have this one thing," Claire snapped. Her voice rose, scraping at old wounds. "You think you're better because you work in finance and wear navy and talk like some CEO. But you're just as jealous as ever. That's why you had to make it about you." I let out a breath, half a laugh, half something sadder. "This one thing?" I repeated softly. And then, without meaning to, the truth slipped out, raw and clean. "I don't hate you, Claire. I just finally stopped loving you the way they taught me to." She flinched as if I had slapped her. I turned away, walked through the gate without looking back, but then I heard another voice, my father's, low, sharp, heavy with finality. "Stephanie!" I turned slowly. He stood rigid on the porch, one hand gripping the railing like it was the only thing holding him up. "If you walk away now, you are no longer part of this family. Not a phone call, not an inheritance, not a name." His eyes were cold, hard. My mother stood beside him, wringing her hands, her mouth tight with something that looked almost like fear. I didn't rush. I stepped back just enough to meet his gaze without trembling. "You made the mistake," I said. "The first time you looked at me and saw inconvenience instead of potential." I shifted my eyes to my mother. "And you made it again tonight, when you thought a threat would work better than love." I didn't shout. I didn't plead. I just spoke the truth that had been waiting to be spoken since the first time my trophies were cleared to make room for Claire's broken pieces. Before my father could answer, another voice broke through. "David." Grandpa Arthur's voice, firm and unwavering, cut across the porch. He stepped forward, hand still clasped around Grandma Helen's like an anchor. "If you're going to threaten to cut Stephanie out of this family," he said, voice strong despite the years etched into his bones, "then we need to clarify something right now." Everyone turned, even Claire froze. Grandma stepped up beside him, her heels clicking softly, her chin high, her eyes steady. "We updated our will 3 months ago," Grandma Helen said, voice calm and sharp like a blade wrapped in velvet. "The house, the retirement accounts, the savings, the family shares, everything we own, it's going to Stephanie." The gasp that escaped my mother's mouth was almost comical. "What?" she croaked. Grandpa Arthur didn't blink. "We've watched long enough, seen enough. We know who gives and who takes, who listens, who stays silent when it matters." He looked directly at me. "And we made our choice." "You can't," Mom hissed, face flushing with outrage. "Claire is my daughter." Grandma's smile was small and terribly sad. "And Stephanie is the only one who never made her love a weapon." Claire's face crumpled. "So, you're punishing me for being sick? For struggling?" she choked out. Grandpa's voice stayed gentle. "No, we're rewarding someone for never using their wounds to wound others." That night didn't end with screaming. It ended with silence. Claire bolted up the stairs, the bouquet slipping from her fingers and landing forgotten on the steps. My parents stood frozen on the porch, stunned into speechlessness for the first time in my memory. I walked toward my grandparents, feeling the strangest lightness in my chest. Grandpa Arthur reached for me first, his hand steady and sure. "I don't want the inheritance," I said, voice soft. "I know," he said simply. "That's why you're the only one who should have it." We left together, Grandma's hand warm against mine in the back seat of their car. I stared out at the Seattle night, at the blurred streetlights, at the world that somehow looked brighter, freer, even through the drizzle. "You don't have to fight anymore," Grandma whispered. "You just get to live." And for the first time in years, I believed her. 3 years have passed. Not one call from my parents. Not even a message on my birthday. Not when I made Forbes's 40 under 40. Not when my firm crossed $4 billion in assets. Not when I bought my own home overlooking Green Lake. I used to think that kind of silence would burn, that it would hollow me out, leave me gasping for the echoes of the family I lost. But it didn't. It felt clean, like stepping out of a burning house you never realized was already ash and smoke. I visit my grandparents every Sunday now. Their red brick house smells like cinnamon and worn leather and something softer I can't name. Grandma Helen always insists I take home leftovers. Grandpa Arthur still taps along to old jazz vinyls spinning endlessly in the background. Sometimes we just sit together in the backyard, wrapped in quilts, watching the seasons change. Theirs is a love built not on apologies, but on presence, on seeing, on staying. In their quiet acceptance, I found the kind of belonging I used to think could only be begged for. One rainy afternoon, sipping tea too sweet to finish, I asked them, "Do you ever regret it? Choosing me?" Grandpa Arthur didn't even look up from his crossword. "We didn't choose you," he said. "We saw you." Grandma smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't ask for anything in return. "And you chose yourself. That's what mattered." Their words settled into the hollow spaces inside me and grew roots where grief had once lived. I haven't spoken to Claire since that night. I saw her once, briefly, in the lobby of my firm. She looked thinner, sharper around the edges, still wearing resilience like a brand new coat she hadn't broken in yet. She approached cautiously. "I'm not here to apologize," she said. I nodded. "I figured." She hesitated. "I just wanted to know how you're doing so well, without anyone lifting you up." I studied her for a moment, not with anger, not even with pity, just with a clarity she would never be able to touch. "Because I had nothing," I said, "and that's when I learned to stand." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. She turned and walked away, shoulders rigid under the weight of a story that would never belong to me again. I didn't chase her. I didn't call after her. I just watched her go, feeling nothing but a small, quiet gratitude. For myself. For the path I had carved through the silence. When I was promoted to CEO, I didn't throw a party. I didn't send invitations or order banners or arrange for speeches. I went home, kicked off my heels, poured a glass of wine, and made pasta from scratch. I danced barefoot in my kitchen while the sauce simmered, laughing at nothing, crying at everything. I called Grandma Helen. She answered on the second ring. "I never doubted it," she said simply, and for the first time in my life, I believed her. I believe myself now too. That's the difference. I used to think I was the girl no one would ever choose. The background noise to someone else's standing ovation. The sturdy bridge everyone crossed without stopping to admire. But I know better now. I wasn't chosen because I shouted loudest. I wasn't chosen because I stayed invisible. I was chosen because I stayed true. Because I built something they couldn't take. Because when they refused to hand me the mic, I didn't wait. I took it. And I spoke. Not to shame. Not to beg. Not to destroy. But to say, once, clearly, fine, I am here, I always was. And that is enough.